We've got the rest of the Week 6 slate here, and we're going to get you ready for Week 7 when 6 teams are on a bye. We're going to help you beat the waiver wire, get there before it's too late, and get those lineups ready for this week and next week. How about that? Welcome to Fantasy Football Today. Happy Friday, everybody. Remember, we have a mailbag coming up. If you want to send us an email, I don't know if it'll get on this week's mailbag. You can always email us at fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. Dave and Jamie are here. I'm Adam. Which unit is better this year? Not for fantasy, just which unit is better? The Kansas City Chiefs offense or the Kansas City Chiefs defense?
Their defense. It's been fairly impressive.
Yeah, well, that sucks for fantasy. Okay.
Why? I started the Chiefs DST.
Oh, great. And that's good. They're boring. They don't produce the fantasy points we want, and they don't give up the fantasy points we want anymore. It's not like, oh, the Chiefs are coming to town. Here's a shootout. They've had the Broncos and the Vikings the last 2 games, and we can't get a big game from Patrick Mahomes. It's a little bit of frustration for fantasy managers here. What do you guys think about, Jamie, what do you think? Kansas City 19, Denver 8.
Well, you probably thought it was the greatest game you've ever seen. A little boring, but I think there's a couple things you look at. First, Travis Kelce's best game so far this season, so that was good to see, especially coming in with an ankle injury. Then Isaiah Pacheco's involvement in the passing game, 6 catches was great, so he's doing things in different ways, not just relying on scoring touchdowns. And my gosh, the Broncos are a mess. Absolute mess. You got 3 guys in the backfield now. That's frustrating.
4.
Receivers.
It's 4. They were using their fullback as a passing downs guy.
Yeah, it's 3 guys. The receiving core is, okay, Cortland Sutton continues to produce, but it was ugly.
Right.
I hope they trade Jerry Jeudy at this point. If Steve Smith will allow it. And
Steve Smith, the NFL GMs are going to call Steve Smith and be like,
no,
hey.
I think he meant one team in particular is going to call Steve Smith, the team that has already made it clear that they want to go get a wide receiver, the team that he used to play for. So that was pretty obvious what he was talking about.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, so it's just ugly. It's ugly. Play Marvin Mims more, please, and start to rely on your younger players if you're Denver, and that I think will hopefully be the case.
Did Russ to me look like, and this is not just yesterday, but last week too, he looks like the Russ of 2022. He's not trusting his eyes downfield. He doesn't trust his offensive line. It was either one of 2 things for him on most plays. He was either getting rid of the ball too quickly and not giving his receivers a chance to get open downfield, or he was holding the ball too damn long and he would get sacked.
Dave, how many times they showed how covered all of the receivers were?
There were plenty of those, but there were also times where they were open a little bit. They weren't wide open. He's just not good anymore. I hate to say it. A couple of throws on that scoring drive were good, but he was late on the deep throw to Cortland Sutton. Sutton's touchdown catch was awesome. I want to give him props for that.
Yeah.
But everything else, man, this offense is a mess. Woof.
Yeah, Jeudy only played 65% of the snaps. That was disappointing. Kelce played 69% of the snaps, so obviously not fully healthy. Amazing what he was able to do in this game. I don't know. I don't really know there's that much to say. I mean, did anyone's value change in your eyes? It was a disappointing game for Pacheco. It was a good game for Rice, but still only 4 targets. He turned them into 72 yards, and he played half the snaps, which is typical for him. Dave, did anyone's fantasy value change in your eyes?
I think that Rashee Rice has a path to being a better fantasy receiver. You just look at the other wideouts that they've got in Kansas City. Who else is making plays for them? I'd be really happy if I had Rice on my bench. And I think eventually what Jamie's talking about with the young guys in Denver, you're going to see that eventually, where you'll see more McLaughlin and more Marvin Mims. Once they trade Jeudy, you'll definitely see more of Marvin Mims.
But will you see those guys with Russ? That's the problem. Because if they're starting to make changes, are they going to
put Russ on the bench and go to Stidham? Yeah, it's possible. Yeah. But we saw Stidham. There were 2 games last year. One of them he was great, and one of them he stunk. So there'll probably be some inconsistency if he plays, but I would imagine they'd put him in a situation where he won't screw up. He might not screw up as much as Russ has been screwing up. Let's put it that way.
It's interesting. It's easy to sit Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin. I mean, you could obviously drop P. Ryan at this point.
Yeah, he's basically the hurry up back now.
Can you drop those guys? Like, what are you going to get from them? I mean, I saw your face, Dave, and I get that. You've got this opportunity to get a guy who's going to get 12 carries this week for 50 yards. That'd be awesome. But are they going to?
That sounds like Javonte. I think McLaughlin's got a little bit more appeal than that.
Yeah. I hate those types of players. I talk about it a lot.
Yep.
Too good to drop, but not good enough to start. I hate those players. That was Tevin Coleman back in the day. It was the first player I said that about when he was the number 2 guy behind Devontae Freeman. It's like, I can't drop this guy, but I can never start this guy. It's like purgatory on your team. All right, we got to talk about Mahomes, Jamie. Patrick Mahomes is QB what rest of season? I think he was QB 7 or something going into the game. He scored 19.3 fantasy points. He had an interception in the end zone, kind of changed his game. But he's QB what rest of season?
Say 5. I mean, there's going to be some big games coming from him, so there's still top 3. There's still number 1 potential. But look, the defense and the run game have been better than we thought. And that's a problem right now. The receiving core has not helped him. I don't know if this receiving core is dramatically worse than last year's receiving core when it was Juju Smith-Schuster, MVS, and Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, Mecole Hardman. He was getting some touchdowns there, but it's just a problem right now. And there's certainly a buy low window. You should clearly be making trades to get Patrick Mahomes, because if this offense sort of wakes up, and again, it's not like they've been awful. They just haven't been to the higher levels and the ceiling that we're used to getting. But man, if you can get Mahomes cheap right now,
yeah,
absolutely do so.
Would you rather have Mahomes or Burrow rest of season? And how confident are you in this pick?
Mahomes and confident.
Mahomes, and I don't think I'm quite as confident as Jamie sounds, but yes.
I would need to see Burrow do that again one more week. And he's capable of it, but just to make sure like he's fully back and it wasn't just the Cardinals.
Dave is way too high on Joe Burrow this week. What do you have him 5th?
Yeah, something like that.
Why? What has he done to prove
he's healthier? He's getting T. Higgins back, and I think the weakness of the Seattle defense is
that's the game of the week.
There we go.
And I don't really have a voice. I can't do it this week.
You cough your way through the song. Go ahead.
It's the game of the week. Hey!
The game of the week is brought to you by Hall's Cough Drops. Use them when you've got a cough for a month straight.
Sorry, I didn't mean to call you out on your Burrow ranking. I was just trying to.
No, I know you had to get me. That I'll give you an A- on that. That was a good one.
All right, thank you. Back to this game.
Do you actually believe it? Because you told us before the show that you didn't have a game of the week.
That was I didn't, and then I was like, let's do Cincinnati, Seattle. Yeah, I think it's going to be a really good game. I hope it's going to be high scoring and very competitive. I should have said what I said about Pacheco. I think I said he had a disappointing game. He did have 6 catches. He had almost 100 total yards and 6 catches, so it was really good. I guess I was a little surprised he didn't score a touchdown, but
it's the worst game against the Broncos since week 2.
Yeah,
no, I'm sorry, since week 2, because Brian Robinson had 22 plus points.
All right, I think that pretty much wraps up that game. Weekend programming, we got a lot of it. Of course, we have the mailbag. And if you want your question read on the mailbag, the best bet is to give us an Apple Podcast 5-star review and do that on maybe Tuesday or so, Monday or Tuesday with your question for whatever week is coming up. It takes a while for that to populate in Apple. And of course, we have Ask FFT on Twitter, hashtag Ask FFT. We'll be answering your questions throughout the weekend. We got another London game. So HQ is at 9 a.m. Fantasy Football Today on CBS Sports HQ. You can watch it on the CBS Sports app. You should just get the CBS Sports app, and you should be watching HQ all the time.
It's free.
Yeah, it's awesome. Really great content. Mm-hmm. And then we have our live stream on YouTube at youtube.com/Fantasy Football Today, starting at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, going right up until kickoff. Heath is on for the first half hour, Dave for the second half hour, Jamie for the third half hour, Chris Towers, Frank Stamfel, they're on for the entire time. News and notes. Daniel Jones missed practice again. So we'll see if he practices today, but I guess right now we should expect Tyrod Taylor at revenge game for Taylor. All right. Deshaun Watson will not play this week, according to our Josina Anderson facing the 49ers. He's 85. I'm still surprised that he's 85% roster. We'll talk about beat the waiver wire. I thought maybe Watson was a guy you could beat the waiver wire with, but nobody's really dropping him. Jeff Wilson was limited in practice, but has a chance to play this week. So make sure he's rostered. Tony Pollard was limited with a shoulder injury. That was their first practice of the week, their Monday night. Saquon Barkley, still don't know if he'll play, but he continues to be limited. Elijah Mitchell back on the practice field. And Miles Sanders missed practice with a shoulder injury. So I think we talked about this game yesterday, but now he missed practice again. So, Jamie, your thoughts on Chuba Hubbard if Sanders is out at Miami?
A good flex. I don't know if you want to necessarily say must start running back, but he's going to get a lot of opportunities, a lot of touches, certainly working the passing game. They're double digit underdogs, so they're probably going to be chasing points against the Dolphins. He's already kind of been their passing downs back and working in these, fourth quarter garbage time situations, and now get a chance to get more carries. So don't necessarily want to say he's great. He did have some good moments over the last couple of years when he did get double digit touches. So in that, flex range, probably better than the guys like Jerome Ford, Rashad White, Damian Pierce, those type of guys.
And ahead of DeMarcado?
If there is no Keontae Ingram, I would go DeMarcado, but
I would too. But if there is
same range.
Ingram and no Sanders, I think you
Same
got to
range.
go with Chuba Fly.
Yeah.
Okay. How about Chuba Hubbard with Sanders out or Deontay Foreman?
Foreman.
Especially if there's no Roshan Johnson.
Well, that's what I was assuming. I'm assuming there's no Roshan Johnson. Is he?
I would assume there's no Miles Sanders either.
Okay. Roshan Johnson still hasn't practiced. That's another running back note for you there. Jonathan Taylor is going to get more work this week. Keontae Ingram. I actually didn't see the updated injury report last
Still limited.
week. Still limited. Okay. So that's nothing new for Keontae Ingram. And wide receiver news. Mike Evans got in a limited practice. That was good to see.
Mm-hmm.
Tampa Bay, they have who they have this week? I'm sorry, Detroit. That game's coming up. T. Higgins was limited. He's trending in the right direction. For the game of the week, yeah. Zay Jones missed practice. Tank Dell missed practice. Devontae, did Zay Jones miss? Am I right about that? Did Zay Jones miss practice? Okay.
Yeah, but I thought you were about to say Devontae Adams didn't practice.
No, he was limited, right?
He was limited. Yep.
Okay.
Trending.
So,
good.
Chris Olave practiced in full. That was good. Darren Waller limited in practice. Sam Laporta might miss this week's game. He has a calf injury.
Yeah, that sucks.
Got to see what happens on Friday.
Boy, we just can't get Josh Reynolds out of our lineup, right?
I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, it's great.
Yeah.
Jahmyr Gibbs, by the way, I forgot about him. He also did not practice.
Hey, did you get a chance to watch Derek Carr's game last week?
Yes, I did.
Thought he looked better, right?
Much better.
Good. That's good for Olave. And Olave was this close to having a second touchdown on a deep pass.
Yeah.
Let's hope he's okay with that toe injury.
Yep.
Right. It was encouraging that he practiced in full. But you never know what that means, right? I mean, 2 weeks ago, I remember Joe Burrow was practicing in full and he was horrible that week. So you never know. Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid were both limited, but easier to see Knox getting back this week than Kincaid.
Yes.
On the offensive line, the Giants' offensive line is still very beat up, and Buffalo will get, I'm going to set an honest over-under here, 7.5 sacks for the Bills.
Yep, probably.
What do you think?
I would take the under, but it's probably close.
I don't know what else. Any other big ones here? It's still the Rams. Joe Noteboom might miss the game, but Kevin Dotson came back to practice. I don't know. Are there any defenses or offensive lines that are particularly beat up in a sense that it's going to change fantasy this week?
Do we know Jeffrey Simmons' status?
I'm checking right now.
Okay.
Because that would make the Ravens running backs a lot more interesting.
Justice Hill.
Yeah. Hill over.
He was limited. He was limited on Thursday after missing Wednesday.
I mean, look, they've already, they ruled out the guys that weren't going to make the trip. Like Traylon Burks, for example. They didn't send him to London.
For the Ravens, Morgan Moses practiced in full, so that's good. That's their right
Huge
tackle.
for them,
They'll get him.
figuratively and literally.
Yeah. All right. It's not one of those weeks, I guess, where we're looking at major defensive injuries. We'll see if did Darius Slay practice? I'm sorry, I know I should know this.
I think he did.
All right. I don't know that it really matters for that Jets game.
It
All right, let's go
does.
to one question for each game. Minnesota's at Chicago. Who's a better waiver wire?
He did not. I'm taking it back. Thursday did not practice Darius Slay.
Okay. All right, one question for each game. Minnesota's at Chicago. Better waiver wire flex, KJ Osborne or Deontay Foreman?
PPR and half PPR, it's Osborne. Non, it's Foreman.
I agree.
Arizona's at the Rams. I mean, the one question for this game has to be starter sit Amari DiMercato.
I would try and not start DeMarcado because we don't know just how much he'll cut into the rushing workload. I am not a fan of Keontae Ingram. He is averaging below 2 yards per carry so far in his NFL career. He hasn't impressed in the preseason. He's just a physical grinder without a lot of juice. And DeMercado's got a little bit of it, and he's a good pass catcher out of the backfield. I think they'll trail in this game against LA, and that'll give DeMercado a chance for maybe 5 catches. I don't feel great about him this week. He's at best a low-end RB2.
You got 3 guys that a lot of people I think are going to have some tough times with: Chuba Hubbard, DeMercado, and Deontay Foreman. They're all backups stepping into potentially big roles. Not the easiest of situations for any of them based on the defenses that they're facing, but opportunity is there. So it's a guessing game
Yeah.
for sure. I would rank them Foreman, DeMercado, Hubbard right now.
That's how I have it right now, too. I could see it switching, though, if there's no Sanders. We already talked about that.
Yep.
I apologize for how unprofessional this is. I have to step away for a moment. Can you guys continue? Dave, you have the notes. Can you read the one question?
Yeah,
for each?
sure.
Sure.
Right.
I got it too.
Detroit-
Oh, you got it? All right.
All right. We'll take turns. Detroit at Tampa Bay. How do you approach the Tampa Bay wide receivers, Jamie?
If Mike Evans plays, he's a must-start guy, and Chris Godwin's a number 3 receiver. If there is no Mike Evans, Chris Godwin's a must-start guy, and you can play the guessing game on Trey Palmer or anybody else if you would like.
One-word answer: is Trey Palmer worth stashing in deeper leagues?
Not if Evans plays.
Okay. You want to
You
ask
keep
the
going.
next one?
You
Oh,
keep
okay.
going, sorry.
Washington and Atlanta. Are you buying into the Desmond Ridder home road splits? And Adam has the notes. In his career at home, completion rate is 70%. Yards per attempt is 7.5. 100.4 passer rating on the road. Completion rate is below 60% and 5 yards per attempt, 177 yards per game. Do you believe in the Desmond Ridder, Amari Cooper, Jared Goff home road splits?
I hope for his sake he plays better at home because he does not play well on the road. Do I want to trust Desmond Ridder as a fantasy option? No. I just hope he gets the important guys the ball. So that would be Drake London and Kyle Pitts and even Jonnu Smith if we want to start to consider him borderline starter at that position. So that's the only thing I really care about, where he's playing and how it impacts those guys.
Washington's been terrible against the deep pass. We all saw it last Thursday. I'm kind of hopeful for Drake London this week. Eagles at the Jets. Who's the best running back in this game?
DeAndre Swift. I like that Brees Hall was back to being Brees Hall again, but this is not the game you want to say, okay, I'm going all the way back in. You're still starting him. I get that, the running back position being what it is. But no Elijah Vera Tucker taking on this defensive front. There is a great buy low opportunity coming for Brees Hall if he struggles in this game because they have a bye in week 7. And so for the fantasy managers that might need some running back help, you can try and get him before the week 8 schedule picks up because it's a great finishing kick. So if he does have a poor game, then try and make trades for Brees Hall. If he has a great game, you're obviously loving the situation for him. But I think he's going to have a little bit of a downturn based on what we saw from last week.
4 games after the bye: Giants, Chargers, Raiders, Bills. I know everybody's nervous about the Bills. They're terrible against the run so far this year. Adam, Dallas at the Chargers. Josh Palmer or KJ Osborne this week?
I got to go Palmer. That was my question to you guys, though. How about you? That's a tough one for me. I like these guys.
I would go Palmer as well, but I agree. I think they're both very, very similar.
I agree that they're similar. I will take my chances with Osborne, knowing that I think he's locked into that role now moving forward. Palmer could come out of the bye week and lose some opportunities to Quentin Johnston. Plus, Austin Eckler's back, and Eckler will take some targets away. I'll go with Osborne.
The reason I like Palmer slightly better and why I think it's going to be a fun game for the Chargers. Do you remember who Mike McCarthy decided to move on from this offseason?
Kellen Moore.
Do you remember what he said about Kellen Moore?
He plays too fast and throws the ball too much.
And he likes to worry about lighting up the scoreboard. What do you think Kellen Moore is going to want to do in this matchup for the Chargers? I'm all in on the Chargers this week.
I love it. It's a great narrative. All right, this last question for the one question for each game. I hope this doesn't sound crazy to people, but I'm nervous about it. Starter sit Saquon Barkley if he plays Giants at Buffalo.
So we had this conversation yesterday. I forget which running back we were talking. Maybe Joe Mixon, I think it was. Like, who would you start over, Mix or Henry? I forget who we were comparing this to. But, you have Raheem Mostert, David Montgomery, Kyron Williams. I might be forgetting somebody. But that group of guys that were either drafted later or picked up off the waiver wire in some cases, that it's somewhat easy to bench Saquon Barkley if you have those guys. Like, you're not benching him for Chuba Hubbard and DeMercado and Foreman and those guys, but The offensive line's a disaster. They're significant underdogs. Dave just said that the Bills are bad against the run. I don't know if they're really bad against the run. They gave up, a couple big runs to Breece Hall in week 1, and they struggled against Achane in a 48-20 blowout win for them. So, I guess ETN beat them up too. So,
ETN.
yeah, losing Matt Milano stinks. So for them, but is Saquon Barkley A, healthy enough, and B, does the offensive line give him enough opportunities that he's top 10 worthy? So I would put him I probably would play Zach Moss over him, to be honest with you.
Whoa. Wow. Okay. All right. So I'm not crazy because I have one league with Barkley and I'm sitting him for Pollard, Walker, and Swift.
Oh, yeah. Those are easy decisions. It's when you get to Alexander Madison, Brian Robinson, those types of guys.
Okay. So he's in that range. Well, that's the last game we're going to talk about. So in case people don't stick around for that long, Madison, Barkley, who was the other one? Robinson. Dave, give me your rankings of those players.
I'll put those guys ahead of Saquon.
All right.
As bad as the Bills' run defense is, and they could get worse without Matt Milano there, the offensive line for New York, and then if there's no Daniel Jones, I feel like this offense is going to hit the toilet this week.
I got news for you. Even if there is Daniel Jones, this offense is going dead on the can.
But I'll feel a little bit better about Saquon if Jones can get into practice on Friday and play without restriction.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we'll help you beat the waiver wire. 6 teams are on bye in week 7, so get ahead of the game. We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for being here on this Friday. Appreciate it. And let's take a look. The Jets, the Cowboys, the Texans, the Titans, the Bengals, and the Panthers are on a bye. So the bad news is there's 6 teams on a bye. The good news is 4 of them are the Jets, Titans, Panthers, and Texans actually kind of a big deal, but it's not the worst. It's not the biggest by NATO. It's like a category 1 by NATO.
Yeah, week 11 will be the category 5.
All right, Dave, you've already really planned for this. You have practically a column written about who to pick up. So who are the headliners if you need to get ahead of it?
Well, which position do you want to talk about? I think it's easiest to start with the DSTs and then work our way to the tougher positions. I like the idea of picking up the Commanders and the Rams defenses because you can start them in week 6 and in week 7. Commanders have the Giants in week 7. They play at Atlanta in week 6. I think that they're okay to roll with the Rams this week, have Arizona, and then they've got the Steelers at home in week number 7. Double checking to make sure that's right. It is. So you could roll with those defenses, and then you don't have to worry about it for the next 2 weeks. But week 7 DSTs, the Browns, maybe think twice about dropping them. They're at Indianapolis. Seattle is home against Arizona. Green Bay and Tampa Bay are also on the list. Quarterbacks. I don't know how many of these guys you'd feel comfortable starting this week. Sam Howell, Geno Smith, Jimmy Garoppolo, Derek Carr. I like their matchups in week 7. I like Jordan Love's matchup at Denver in week 7 coming off the bye. And I don't know if Deshaun Watson's going to be back or not. He's got Indianapolis in week 7. The waiver wire running backs, most of these guys are already rostered, but if you can find Antonio Gibson, whoever's left over from Jeff Wilson and Savon Ahmed, Kendre Miller, maybe you'll be able to squeeze out a couple of points from those guys who could be worth a damn in week number 7. And receivers, maybe Josh Reynolds is still out there. Maybe Josh Downs is still out there. I've seen JSN out there in more leagues than he should be. He's got Arizona in week 7. I wonder if he comes alive after the bye. He gets the post-bye bump and ends up being someone who could be a bye week replacement for the week after next. Same thing with Michael Wilson and Brandon Powell, slot receiver for Minnesota, moving forward. I don't like his matchup against San Francisco in week 7, but he might get you 10 PPR points.
All right, that was pretty quick. I mean, that was a lot of names there, but you got Garoppolo at the Bears. I know I'm just going to repeat some. Garoppolo at the Bears, Howell at the Giants. Those are 2 guys you could look at. You didn't mention the Bears running backs, but they've got the Raiders in week 7, and Deontay Foreman is still 58% rostered. And Roshan,
he would be at the top of the list then.
I think Roshan Johnson's 78% rostered, so you might be able to find him in some leagues, and hopefully I would think he'll be back for week 7. Josh Downs, I don't know if you said him, but I just think he's under rostered to begin with.
Yep. We've been talking about him for a couple of weeks now.
Yeah, Elijah Moore, if Watson's back, he gets like 8 targets every game, basically, when Watson plays.
And 40 receiving yards.
Yeah. But, you could be desperate. And then Deontay Johnson is 71% rostered. I mean, that is the first beat the waiver wire right now is Deontay Johnson. Just go get him. I don't know if you mentioned Logan Thomas at the Giants in week 7.
Logan Thomas, Luke Musgrave, and even Pat Fryermuth at the Rams.
Okay. All right, let's go to the games. Minnesota's at Chicago. Kind of weird. Stat of the game. The Bears, they're not terrible against wide receivers. I think they're 20th. Mike Evans is the only wide receiver with more than 65 yards against the Bears. No wide receiver has more than 8 targets against the Bears. And Evans, by the way, cheated. He had a blatant pass interference that wasn't called against the Bears for a 70-yard game. He cheated. I'm sorry. It's just cheating. But actually, even if you took that away, you still would have had 100 yards. But anyway, it's kind of weird. There's such a bad defense, but for some reason, wide receivers don't really crush them. But this team throws more than basically any team in football. The Vikings.
Yep.
They did with Jefferson. So yeah, I guess what are your expectations for the passing game here, Jamie?
I think that we're still going to get the high volume passing attack from the Vikings. It'll probably be a little bit of a downturn, especially if Madison gets going a little bit. We saw that in the Panthers game. I know there was a time of possession issue for Minnesota, but that was a game where Madison had 17 for 95 yards, I think it was. So, he was running the ball well, and maybe as well as he's run all season. So that could certainly happen this week against the Bears, whether it's, Madison or the group, with Cam Akers and Ty Chandler. So if the Vikings do get a little bit more conservative without Jefferson on the field, the thing about it though is I think the Bears are going to score. So I think we're going to have, there's some shootout potential here because the way Justin Fields is playing right now. And I know the Vikings defense has played a little bit better of late, but they're still, with the way Fields is rolling right now, I think the Bears offense will be able to put up some points. So Addison is a must-start receiver now, until he proves otherwise. He's got 3 games with 6 targets. He's averaging over 15 PPR points per game in those 3. He's probably going to get 6+ targets, so hopefully that continues. And Hawkinson will be fine. It's the question of, you asked this before about, Osborne versus Palmer, and just really Osborne versus a lot of wide receivers. How much do you want to buy into him and trust him in his first game without Justin Jefferson there? And, Dave mentioned Powell, and, we'll see if there's, more attention to just Hawkinson and Addison across the board. So there is some risk with Osborne. So he should be rostered. Comes down to who you have on your team. But there is certainly the upside of being the guy who gets some of those, if not all of the 8 targets that Justin Jefferson has vacated. And if that's the case, then Osborne's going to be potentially really good.
Well, I think with Osborne, you're hoping that he scores. I don't think he's particularly a burner. He struggled to separate from coverage as recently as last week. And the track record says that he's touchdown dependent. 20 career games with at least 5 targets. He scored at least 12 PPR points in 13 of the 20. And in 11 of those 13 games, he scored a touchdown.
Yeah.
So I think he needs to score. And Chicago's second.
Dave needs a second. Dave froze.
I think the thing that we've seen from Osborne, he's benefited from having somebody great opposite him. And so will he have somebody great opposite him
That's
this
fair.
week?
I was going to say the Bears secondary, I thought they played better last week. I thought the whole defense played better last week. You can take the opponent into consideration. Jalen Johnson is expected back for them. He's their best corner.
Well, it's also Eberflus is calling the defensive plays now too. That's been evident the last couple of games that they've looked better. They had the 4th quarter collapse against the Broncos, but they look much better against the Commanders. And so I think that's part of it, that they're getting healthy. They have probably better play calling. And so we'll see how that goes this week against Minnesota.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about the way you guys are ranking the Vikings is that how many Hawkinson is obviously a layup. Is Addison a layup? Because Cousins, Osborne, and even Madison, who I think you have around 18th or so, you're not like shouting to the mountain, shouting to the hill, running up and shouting on top of a mountain, start these guys. It's like, yeah, they're fine. But Addison, I guess, would he be like a slam dunk?
Yeah.
He's pretty close to it. Yeah. I'll say it again. There's only 2 teams on a bye, and we have a couple of injuries that we're dealing with. There's still 30 to 36 wide receivers that are must-start guys. And so when you look at those players, and then you see where Addison is ranked, I don't know where everybody else has him. He's top 20 for me. I think it's like 15.
Me too.
There's just a lot to love. For Madison, if there wasn't what we saw last week where Cam Akers was playing more, and again, we had the benefit of Tom Spencer joining us, who's in the booth with Nance and Romo, and he said, because he met with the coaches, they're talking up Cam Akers, they're talking up Ty Chandler, and then we saw it from a snap count perspective. That's a little bit concerning because we know Madison, while some of the fantasy production has still been there, the play has not been very good. So will they make a little bit more of a switch? So I hope Madison, like I said, comes out and sort of still is the guy. But you're starting him. I mean, as Dave said, and I would agree. Madison over Saquon Barkley this week doesn't seem like it's an easy call, but it might be just based on how healthy Barkley is.
Yeah, Madison has now gone 33 straight games without a run longer than 17 yards. In a lot of those games, he was a backup, but it's just he just doesn't really make big plays, so he needs the volume or he needs the touchdowns. The Bears give up the third most fantasy points to running backs. They're not so bad per carry, but they give up the most receiving yards per game to running backs. All right, we love Jordan Addison. Heath loves Kirk Cousins. Has Cousins 4th. You guys have Cousins 11th. So we can do some Cousins auras. Oh, by the way, we'll do the same thing that we did yesterday. If anybody in the chat has a question specific to this game, like this one right here, KJ Osborne or Josh Downs, PPR.
I have Osborne higher.
Yeah, I do too, but I'm a little torn, just based on how much Josh Downs has been getting so much attention from Gardner Minshew. So it's close. If you have more of a gut feeling on Downs, I have no problem with it.
Okay, we can do some more Cousins stuff kind of as we go through the day. But you like Fields better than Cousins, I assume?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Another big day for Fields and DJ Moore?
I think so. I mean,
until
look,
the wheels fall off.
He's locked in right now, and he's locked in on DJ Moore too. So we'll see if Minnesota is going to stop him, but he's looked great the last 2 weeks.
Minnesota's another team that gives up a lot of deep balls, a lot of big plays, just like the Commanders last week. It was a great matchup for DJ Moore. So another one that could be a big day for DJ Moore. He's top 7 for everybody in both non and full PPR. I'm not even going to ask DJ Moore questions. The answer for Dave, Jamie, and Heath is DJ Moore. All right, Deontay Foreman. I'm sorry. Have you ranked Foreman as if he's the lead guy and Roshan Johnson's out?
Yes.
Yes. I sort of had a little bit of okay, this is kind of where he will be, and maybe Johnson's playing. I'll bump him up a couple spots if Johnson's ruled out.
Oh, okay. And so he's right around 23rd, 21st for Jamie, 23rd for Dave and PPR.
He'll be right in that low-end RB2 range.
Yeah, he's not going
on
very far,
volume. Volume and fresh legs. I wouldn't rule out him having, a couple of explosive plays.
Zach Moss or Foreman?
I'll take
I have
Moss.
Foreman ahead of Moss right now.
I'll take Moss.
Damian Pierce or Foreman?
Foreman.
Yeah, I'm going to put Foreman ahead of Pierce.
Okay. And Madison ahead of Foreman in this game. How much you like Cole Kmet this week, Dave?
I like him a lot. I think he keeps it rolling too. He's basically the number 2 receiver in this offense ever since Chase Claypool was dumped by the Bears. And I'm not talking about traded away, just they made him inactive. He's been catching fire. I've got him as a top 10 tight end.
And Jamie has him, I think, 6th. So, all right, start Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet or Darren Waller?
Kmet.
I currently have Waller.
All right. I hope I didn't shortchange this game. There's a lot of interesting fantasy parts. We can compare as we get to the show, through the show. Let's see. Addison, Lockett, or McLaurin? PPR.
Addison.
Foreman. These are all chat questions here. Foreman or Stevenson, half PPR?
Stevenson for me.
I'll take Foreman.
All right. That's it for Minnesota and Chicago. On to Arizona. What's that?
Cardinals, Rams?
Yeah, Cardinals, Rams.
Get this one out of the way.
It's not like a great game on paper, but it's an interesting fantasy game because you have so many. You got Kyron Williams. You got the Cardinals are really interesting, obviously.
I feel like one of these teams you can just start them all.
The line is fishy though. Like, are the Rams really 7-point favorites? Should they be favored by 7 over anybody at this point?
Probably not. It reminds me of the Commanders being 6-point favorites against the Bears 2 weeks ago. I don't think they should be 6-point favorites over anyone.
I think it's a byproduct of Arizona getting blown out each of their last 2 games. 19-point loss, 14-point loss. Public perception thinking that Arizona just isn't that good.
What was the spread last night? It was 10.5, wasn't it?
It was 10.5, and the Chiefs won by 11.
That sucks for me, Great for some people. Arizona at the Rams, the stat of the game. Yeah, I mean, I didn't bet on it. I just in a pick 'em. I took the Broncos plus 10.5. Arizona has the lowest pressure rate in the NFL. So that is awesome for Matthew Stafford, because what happened, this is relevant for the Jets game too, really for any Eagles game. The Eagles have had a pretty bad pass rush this year. In the second half of week 5, though, they got after Matthew Stafford. They pressured him on more than half of his dropbacks. The line, like everything was terrible for Stafford in the second half. But the Cardinals, they do have a lot of sacks, 9th in sacks, but that's not telling the whole
They
story.
played the Giants. You got to take that out.
I don't know
They
how
had
many
3 sacks against the Giants. They had 6 sacks against the Commanders in week 1.
Okay,
And last week,
Those two teams will help.
They played against Burrow last week, and you'd think that blitzing Burrow was part of the secret formula for beating him, especially when he wasn't throwing downfield that much. They had their highest blitz rate last week, and it was only 23.5%. It's really low. They just do not blitz a lot, and therefore they don't get a lot of pressure on the quarterback.
All right, let's get some DeMercado questions from the chat so we can talk about him. But how about Marquise Brown? Is he a must-start guy?
Yes.
I think you have to. I mean, it's not an easy matchup. The Rams have given up only 1 touchdown to a receiver through the air so far this year. But it's still one of those situations where he's been so involved and really so productive. I know some of it's touchdown related, but you still just take your chances with if they are chasing points, and the way Josh Dobbs has leaned on him, I still would trust him.
Number 2 receiver.
You'd start him over like KJ Osborne and Josh Palmer.
Yes. Yeah. That's easy.
Pick one in PPR: Higgins, London, or DeMercado.
Higgins.
Assuming he plays, yeah.
But you'd start DeMercado over London?
I don't think so.
In PPR, if there is no Keontae Ingram, I would, yes.
All right. DeMercado is in the same range as, the Foremans of the world. He's basically right behind Foreman.
The players that you should be trusting DeMercado, Hubbard, and Foreman over are Dameon Pierce, Rashad White, and Jerome Ford, for example. Those 3 guys are easy.
I don't know why I'm a little higher on Pierce, because he's gotten so much work the last 2 weeks.
He's gotten more work. He's getting more playing time, but man, it's a tough matchup.
Yeah, it is for sure. All right. And if Keontae Ingram does play, would you still rank DeMercado higher?
Yes. No. Oh, I'm sorry. You said higher than Ingram?
If Ingram plays, who's the highest ranked Cardinals running back?
DeMercado, but I want to stay away from both as much as I can if they play. And I would expect him to play, and you just don't know how it's going to shake out between the two of them. I don't think DeMercado would play at the goal line, for example, because Ingram is the bigger back and the more physical guy. And I don't know, like, you really have to hope that game script comes through. Stafford has a huge game, and DeMercado and the Cardinals are chasing the scoreboard in the second half, and he falls into the type of strictly receiving line that Pacheco had on Thursday. I think he had 9 PPR points just from his receiving.
Yeah, the Rams did lose their nose tackle, Bobby Brown, for what it's worth. So that's I guess a good thing for DeMercado. Sorry to praise it that way. Bad thing for the Rams run defense.
Right. I heard that he wanted to play, but the Rams said no, and that's their prerogative.
Yeah. You was humping around, Dave. Starter sit Zach Ertz.
You should sit him. I mean, it's not the worst of matchups, but you kind of know what you're getting at this point. You got lucky last week with the touchdown.
And did he even have 10 PPR points?
Nope. 9.
Yuck. Yuck. It's really close. For me, it's close between him and Dawson Knox, and I might take Knox.
Oh, I would play Knox for sure if there's no Kincaid.
Yeah. Matthew Stafford is 9th for you guys, 16th for Heath. Matthew Stafford or Kirk Cousins?
I'll take Stafford.
Stafford, yeah. He's my start of the week.
Yeah, baby. Matthew Stafford or Justin Fields?
Fields.
More upside.
Matthew Stafford or Brock Purdy?
Stafford. Much easier.
I have gone back and forth. I think the matchup is just that much easier for Stafford that you give him the nod. Let's
Adam,
put it
how
this
much did
way.
you love that stat I found for you?
What was the stat?
Jim Schwartz versus Kyle Shanahan.
Oh, that was really cool.
That was cool.
Yeah, so go ahead.
What turned me on?
I forget who. I didn't find it. I saw somebody tweet it. I don't want to make it seem like I came up with it. But Jim Schwartz is as a coordinator head coach versus Shanahan as a coordinator head coach. Schwartz is 8-1 against him and has really done a good job in limiting Shanahan's offenses. Now, this is going to be a really good test because the Browns defense has been playing fantastic, but some of their opponents are certainly not to the level of what the 49ers are. And San Francisco may have the ball all day. if Deshaun Watson doesn't play, Batonio may not play, Njoku may not play. They're just really beat up right now, and so it could be just ugly. But will that mean good things for Brock Purdy to the level of what we've seen? And what we've seen again, it's 20 points. So I'd be a little bit cautious about saying he's better than a lot of guys, and I don't think he's better than Stafford.
A couple questions from the chat: Stafford or Tua?
Tua
Tagovailoa.
And this one is the one I have to make: Stafford or Stanford. It says Stanford or Burrow.
They're back to back for me. I would still go Burrow.
That's what I'm doing too. In this game, Ertz or Higbee?
Ertz.
Yes.
All right, I saw some
Higbee
Kyron
got
questions.
cupped last week.
Let's talk about Kyron Williams. You guys do have him right around 12th or 13th. He's still averaging 3.9 yards per carry. His longest run is 20 yards. He's faced some very tough competition, though. This will not be that. You guys love Kyron Williams this week?
Relatively love. It's such a good matchup. The Cardinals have been so bad against running backs. The question is he's probably going to have to score because we saw his passing game work kind of crater last week with Kupp back and Nakua still being great. And, even Tutu Atwell getting his opportunities and Higbee as well. So I don't think you should really fear Kyron in this game. But, again, he could have a little bit of a trap back kind of game if he does not find the end zone.
I think the game script is better for him than like last week's game was, for
Right.
example. So that I've got him 12th in PPR among running backs.
Kyron or Pollard? We have a question.
I think this is a
Pollard.
Pollard breakout game.
I think it's a Cowboys breakout game.
It could have been the game of the week. Maybe it should have been the game of the week.
Isn't that what he told you to do?
I don't remember.
I think so.
Okay. Rams wide receiver, start Kupp, start Nakua. I always see so many Nakua questions because it's just a matter of like this one. Puka, Ridley, Hopkins, pick 2.
The first 2.
Agreed.
Yeah. Is Puka in your top 12?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any interest in Tutu Atwell?
DFS.
Bye week replacement wide receiver. The Cardinals play a lot of zone. This is what I was going to say earlier with Stafford. The Rams are playing the same type of schematic defense for the second week in a row, but it's with worse personnel, meaning they're going to see a lot of zone. They won't get blitzed too much. Stafford should have a much easier time. The receivers should get open a lot easier. And the receivers had a great game last week. And Stafford had over 20 fantasy points last week. I would expect everybody to do better this week.
Sit Tyler Higbee and sit the DSTs. Detroit's at Tampa Bay. I give this stat all the time. Going back to 2022 now, the Buccaneers have allowed 98 yards or a touchdown to 16 wide receivers in their last 9 games. The only time this year that they didn't allow multiple wide receivers to have either 98 yards or a touchdown was when they faced the very injured Derek Carr in week 4. They're supposed to have a good secondary, but they really struggle against wide receivers. And Josh Reynolds is a guy that we get questions about all the time. So start or sit Josh Reynolds at Tampa Bay.
I think with Amon-Ra St. Brown coming back, there's a little bit of downturn coming. But if Sam Laporte is out, then that kind of negates it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you just kind of treat Josh Reynolds as you have been if there is no Laporta with St. Brown back. Good number 3 wide receiver, not a must-start guy. Depends on who you have on your team. And so, like for me, prior to St. Brown coming back with Laporta healthy, and again, I hope Laporta's healthy, he was like in the range of Judy and Sutton and Lockett and McLaurin and those guys, so like wide receiver 33 through 36, so I think that's kind of how you treat him for this week.
Okay. Starter sit, Jared Goff on the road.
Last 14 games, 13 of them, he's been 17 fantasy points or less. And so what we typically end up seeing is the running game takes over. He just doesn't have that second touchdown for whatever reason. So if he did have Laporta there and St. Brown, it's hard to say must sit, but I just don't think the ceiling is there based on what we've seen. It's a pretty big sample size.
I agree with the ceiling part, but I think he can still get you around 20. But it's contingent on Laporta playing, like you said. This Bucs defense, they love to blitz. They love to come after the quarterback. Goff has been better against the blitz and better against pressure this year than in prior years. And I think the offensive line has been a huge factor. They're giving him time. He's more comfortable. A comfortable Jared Goff is a dangerous Jared Goff. I am a little uncomfortable ranking him as my number 12 QB. I think he's okay to start as long as he's got Laporta, St. Brown, Reynolds. I wish he had Gibbs. I think Montgomery could have a little bit of a tough time. I'm starting Montgomery. He's a top 12 running back, but I don't think he'll run away with this game, no pun intended, Montgomery, and take numbers away from Goff.
Kind of
Plus,
like,
I think the Bucs will be competitive offensively.
yeah, I was gonna say, it sounds like you're kind of into the Bucs this week.
I am into the Bucs offensively.
All right, we're sitting Jameson.
Passing game, not the run game, not really.
Sitting Jameson Williams, start him on with St. Brown. If Laporta plays, you're going to start him, unless we get a report about him being limited or something like that, and then we'll talk about it on Sunday morning. Baker Mayfield's outside the top 20 for you guys. Detroit, they haven't been great against the pass, and they just lost their best cornerback, but I understand you don't want to trust Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield does have 3 games with 20 or more fantasy points, though. So that's kind of, interesting. Minnesota, Chicago, and then New Orleans without a couple of defensive backs. You want to sit Rachaad White, right?
Yeah, I would.
I mean, in PPR, at least he's got the chance of getting you a handful of catches. We'll see what his role is coming out of the bye, too. I don't think we've heard anything that suggests he's going to lose that workload that he has, but really tough matchup, man. The Lions defense has been great up front.
He's had one great game this season, which was against the Bears. In 2 of 4 games, he's been 7 PPR points or less. And now you're taking on a Lions team that's yet to allow running back to eclipse 43 rushing yards, and I believe has only allowed 1 or 2 touchdowns to the position. So it's just not something I think you want to buy into this week, especially knowing how this Detroit defense is played. Did he leave or did he just?
I don't know.
He's been putting himself off camera for the last couple of days.
When he coughs, right?
No, when he blows his nose.
Oh, okay.
So
well,
he probably ran out of
I appreciate that. I don't need to hear him blowing his nose.
No. I think it's good. But
yeah,
let's see. There's a message in the chat. Let's see what he said.
What did he say?
Have to hop off again. So where are we at?
Okay. So it's his issues going on. All right. You want to just move on to the next game?
Yeah. What do we got? Washington, Atlanta.
Washington, Atlanta. I believe is
all
the
right,
next
so
game.
We got Washington. Let's start there. Anybody you trust in this game?
I kind of like Logan Thomas, but it's based on volume. And I think that he's just going to continue to see a nice dose of targets from Sam Howell. I think we know what the Commanders are right now. And I think it further helps his case that Atlanta feels like they've got a good set of cornerbacks. Not only is AJ Terrell playing, and I think he's playing well, but Jeff Okudah's back. And I think they're comfortable with him, leaving him on an island at times. I think they like their slot corner. I think it'll make the matchup a little bit easier for Logan Thomas. I've got him as a top 12 tight end, even in non-PPR. He's a little more touchdown dependent in non-PPR, but I think he's going to continue to get a lot of work there. So that's
I would agree. And he scored in 2 of his last 3 games. And, you've seen so far already this season, Dalton Schultz against his defense, best game of his season. Hayden Hurst week 1, best game of his season so far against the Falcons. So there's a track record here of tight ends playing well. And the fact that Thomas is coming off the game that he had last Thursday against the Bears should make you feel pretty confident that Sam Howell will lean on him. Plus, we've talked about this a lot when Thomas was in and out of the lineup early in the season. They've just leaned on the tight ends in general. So could be a tough game for McLaurin. Very difficult to trust Jahan Danta at this point. The one that I struggle with the most is really Brian Robinson, because we've seen against tough defenses that he's had a little bit of struggles. He did score against the Eagles. That sort of saved his production in that game. But if the Falcons are playing with any semblance of a lead, which at this point, hard to say that that's the case, but obviously the Commanders' defense is terrible, I think Robinson got a chance to still be number 2 running back, but I don't think it's a slam dunk by any stretch. So for me, he's closer to the group of Hubbard, DeMarcado, Foreman than he is ahead of those guys. He's ranked ahead of those guys, but he's not necessarily slam dunk ahead of those guys.
Oh, hi, guys.
Welcome back.
We did not talk Atlanta yet. We just got through Washington.
Okay. Should we go back to Tampa Bay and talk about Kate Otten for a few minutes, or are we good?
No, we're good.
Okay. Yeah, Brian
Unless
Robinson.
you had like a million notes on Kate Otten.
No, I've none. I think I said sit Kate Otten. Okay, yeah, so you're talking about Washington here. So is there anyone on Washington you're excited to start?
Logan Thomas.
Logan Thomas.
We talked about Logan Thomas. You're okay with Brian Robinson. I don't love McLaurin. I don't love Howell as a top 12 quarterback, but as a bye week guy, I'm fine with him.
See, the thing with him, it's like I feel like it's going to have to take either a rushing touchdown or a 2-touchdown game from Logan Thomas, because the way that the receivers have operated, plus this defense, and they've been good against really every quarterback. I mean, look, they slowed down C.J. Stroud last week, and he's been on a roll. I think this is a little bit of a tough game for Howell personally.
Brian Robinson, how would you compare Brian Robinson to like KJ Osborne, Josh Palmer, Josh Downs, Josh Reynolds? Weird that all the Joshes.
I'm probably playing him over them.
If Laporta is out, I would play all those guys over Robinson in PPR.
Ooh, okay.
Full PPR. All right, you need that touchdown from Robinson, but this should be a close game, right? I mean, they're not going to get blown out, you wouldn't think. So that's what really hurts Brian Robinson. I mean, they lost by 34. They lost by 20 one game. Those were bad games for him. When it's been competitive, he's had 19, 18, and 14 carries, and he scored against Philadelphia. All right. So do we have to spend that? Like all the Joshes that I just mentioned, are they ahead of Terry McLaurin and or Jahan Dotson?
No.
Yes.
I don't even know if any of them are ahead of McLaurin. And I don't really like McLaurin, but I don't know if I love any of the other players. I guess you can make the case for Josh Reynolds if there's no Sam Laporta ahead of Terry McLaurin. It's easier to pass up on Dotson just because he just hasn't been productive.
Reynolds is the only one I would consider McLaurin better than if Laporta plays. I take Josh Palmer over him. I take
Josh Downs.
Josh Downs over him in PPR. Yep.
Yeah, I'm not there.
I feel like McLaurin's been like barely better. He's been better than Dotson, but not really that much better. He's averaging
more targets. He gets more targets.
But he has I think it's 4 or 5 games with just 6 targets. Like, it's not like he's getting a lot of opportunities.
Sure. Yeah. There's definitely that. And I think like the target share, I'm saying he has more targets. I think it might be only by like 1, 2, or 3 targets.
5 more targets than
he had a 10 target game, right?
Right. And Curtis Samuel isn't too far behind, or he's in the mix between those two. I don't have it in front of me, but they're all 3 of these receivers are really close. So they're spreading targets around to their 3 receivers, and they're spreading targets to their tight ends, and the running backs are getting into the mix. It's Kansas City part 2. It's like a fake Kansas City in Washington because they're not as good.
I would love to see the Commanders trade McLaurin or Dotson to the Chiefs.
Ooh, now we're talking.
I mean, look, come on. We'd like any receiver to go to the Chiefs at this point. That'd be great. Okay, let's go to the other side of the ball. Are you one of the listeners actually clued me in on the home road splits for Desmond Ridder? So his career at home, 70% completion rate.
Yeah, we talked about this earlier in the one question per team.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I read your notes, so I thought it was cool. That's cool that you got it from a listener. Just keep in mind how many games are we talking about? Desmond Ridder's played 9 NFL games.
Yeah, it's true. It's not that many, but he's so much better at home. And did you talk about the whole deep thing, like the deep ball thing?
No, what's the deep ball thing?
Well, why you like the Falcons, because the Commanders are so bad.
Yeah. Right. So we mentioned that Drake London is someone who could benefit from that. I know that Kyle Pitts has been getting deep targets. I feel like last week Kyle Pitts was a zone beater. There's no question about it. Houston played a ton of zone, and there's a trust that I saw between Ridder and Pitts against zone coverage. The Commanders usually start out playing zone, and then Jack Del Rio goes a little nuts and plays more man, especially when they're behind. I'm trusting Kyle Pitts, but I'm not loving starting Kyle Pitts, even though he had a season best game last week.
Jamie, how you feeling about? Obviously, we're starting Bijan. How you feeling about London and Pitts and Jonnu?
Pitts, I think you just start him based on what we saw last week and hope that there's those type of games or better coming ahead. And again, you saw the secondary, while they were number 1 against opposing tight ends prior to last week, Kmet still scored. So you have tight end beating this defense, Pitts coming off his best game. Again, ride the momentum and hope that there's just more production like that. For Jonnu Smith, I think you just treat him the same way. Low end starter, deeper league options. Certainly in play, tight end premium leagues, must start guy. And so he's been very good. Can we get 3 guys producing in the passing game, or really 4 if you want to factor in Bijan from Desmond Ridder? I don't think that's going to be the case. So somebody's going to probably be left out, like we've seen from London more times than not. So one of these guys will probably struggle, if not 2. So London is a borderline number 3 receiver at best.
Okay. Would you start DeMarcado or London? I think I asked you that earlier, but do it
Yeah,
again.
DeMarcado if there's no Keontae Ingram.
Okay. Would you start? Did you say Logan Thomas or Pitts, by the way?
Logan Thomas for me.
I'll take Pitts.
Dave, Logan Thomas or Jonnu Smith?
Logan Thomas. Smith had a couple of mess ups last week. He fumbled, dropped a pass. I'm a little worried that the Falcons can use Van Jefferson as a changeup as far as like a short area target goes for Desmond Ridder. Obviously, you're not going to see Van Jefferson
Already
play
this
tight end.
week?
I think it could happen as soon as this week.
That would be the first time that Van Jefferson's a short area target in his career.
I know, but he can do that.
Based on what?
Based on what we've seen from him and how good of a route runner he is. He can catch deep balls too. I think he's a pretty decent route runner.
All right. I mean, I don't know. I'm really worried about his impact on this game. And they like 2 tight ends, but all right. Which DST do you prefer? Commanders?
Listen, I think it's okay to start Jonnu if you're in a pinch this week at tight end. Like I've got him 12th. But okay. I wonder, I'm thinking long-term more so than this week that Van Jefferson takes a big bite out of Jonnu.
Ooh, ouch. Which DST do you prefer?
The Falcons.
Okay. Let me give you.
I'll take the Commanders, but it's very close. I won't fight you if you want.
I mean, Sam Howell might get sacked 6 times in this game.
Drake London.
The one thing about the Commanders, I'm sorry to cut you off. After this week, they play the Giants next week. So if I'm picking between those two, at least I know with the Commanders, I can just use them for 2 weeks straight and not have to think about it.
Garrett Wilson or Drake London?
Wilson.
KJ Osborne or Drake London? KJ Osborne or Drake London?
Osborne.
KJ.
Very exciting news.
No, I do have London higher. I'm sorry. They're very close.
Okay. Very exciting news when we come back. Can't wait to talk about it. We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today. So, we have the mailbag coming up later. Got a text from Dan Schneier. I don't know if I'm allowed to read this on the air. I'm going to read it anyway. He said, I got a terrible haircut. I'm mad about it. So there's that.
Yes.
So I'm really looking forward. You better not have a hat on. I'm really looking forward to just because he trashes my hair like every chance he gets. And he's had the same hair every day for his entire life. So I'm sure his haircut looks exactly the same as it did before. But I'm looking forward to this show. All right, guys, I think we got 3 games left. Philadelphia's at the Jets. Stat of the game, no running back has rushed for more than 53 yards against the Eagles. The longest run they have allowed to a running back is 15 yards. Was a Brian Robinson touchdown. Starter sit Breece Hall.
He's a start, but again, I'll go back to the list of running backs that we talked about. Kyron Williams, you should start over him. David Montgomery is easy to start over him. Who was the third guy? Why am I blanking? Oh, Mostert. Easy start over Breece Hall. Mm-hmm. He's a number 2 running back for this week. So it's very difficult to bench him based on what we saw. He's back, but this is one of those situations where if he has a bad game, please buy low on him if there's a panicked fantasy manager that all he did was just take advantage of the Broncos.
Right.
But because they can't use him in week 7 because he's on a bye. So their schedule coming off the bye is fantastic for Breece Hall. The Jets run offense should be great. But this game, I mean, against the Eagles, first game without Elijah Vera Tucker, he's going to have a little bit of a tough time. So I hope it's just that his talent shines through, but it's a really brutal matchup.
But that's what you're banking on. You're banking on him getting opportunities and having him break a couple of big plays. And so I like him. I don't know if I like him as much as I have him ranked right now. I will probably keep him as a top 12 running back.
Oh, wow.
But I do think that there are going to be a lot of opportunities for him. We can't say that for many running backs this week, unfortunately.
That's an aggressive ranking. Okay. Right now you have him ahead of Ken Walker, David Montgomery, Travis Etienne, and Kyron Williams.
I think those guys, it's going to be hard to keep them there.
Okay.
It's probably, I think Jamie's right. I think it's hard to keep him ahead of Kyron Williams too, especially given Kyron's matchup. That might be where I draw the line.
The thing really with Breece Hall is not so much, I think, the running backs. There's a lot of receivers I'd play over him.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I get that.
But you'd start Breece Hall over Barkley.
Yes.
I would.
We got a question here. Garrett Wilson or Michael Pittman?
Pittman.
I like Pittman, especially in PPR.
If Darius Slay doesn't play, would you move Garrett Wilson up?
I think I might.
Yeah, I think so. You got a scenario where they're going to struggle to run, so that game plan, I think, gets thrown out the window early, especially if they're chasing points. And look, while Wilson was bad last week, Garrett Wilson, the previous game he was fantastic against the Chiefs, and that's a really good secondary. So 9 for 60, 14 targets. Zach Wilson was doing what you want, which was giving him chances. And so while the quality of targets aren't great, he also missed a 30-yard touchdown. Zach Wilson did. I don't know how much it was Garrett Wilson's fault, but they hit on one of those. It certainly gives you the opportunity to feel good about that. And what we just saw the Rams receivers, clearly much different level of quarterback play, but the Rams receivers take advantage of this, Eagles defense as well.
That's a good point.
You guys have Garrett. I'm sorry. I just want to go ahead. Go ahead. My bad.
Well, I was going to say is one of the reasons why Garrett Wilson didn't have a good game last week is because the Jets didn't throw as much last week. And I think they're going to have to throw a little bit more. I am nervous about little Zach Wilson running for his life when Jalen Carter and Brandon Graham and this Eagles front gets to him, because the offensive line issue that we brought up with Breece Hall, I think it's going to impact the Jets more when it comes to them dropping back. And so we've already seen a third of the targets from Zach Wilson to Garrett Wilson be considered uncatchable. I still think there's room for him to maybe catch 7 passes in this game, Garrett Wilson. I think the volume will be turned up a little bit more, and that makes me have a little bit more faith in him, but it's as a flex. It's not as a number 2 receiver.
Garrett Wilson or Zay Flowers?
I'll take Flowers. Yeah.
You guys have Garrett Wilson around 28th right now, so he's a flex. Devontae Smith or Chris Olave? Who do you like better? Asks Kenny in our chat.
Right now it's Devontae Smith, but if Olave has no issues with the toe, I might put him at it.
I have Olave higher. I wonder if it feels like we're rotating between who gets the numbers between Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert from week to week. And Goddard just got his numbers, so maybe it's Devontae Smith's turn this week.
Well, my question for the Eagles is are you worried about them against the Jets defense?
I think they're going to be on the field so much, the Eagles are, offensively, that they could do whatever they want to.
And it's easier to run against the Jets than it is to throw against the Jets. So we like DeAndre Swift a lot. Jalen Hurts is a must start, obviously. And then you can't get away from A.J. Brown. And the good thing about A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith is Sauce Gardner doesn't move. And not that the Jets are bad otherwise in the secondary, but Gardner doesn't move. Those guys move. They play about 50% of the snaps on the left side, 50% on the right. Sometimes they'll be in the slot. So they're not going to get shadowed. I really don't think so by Sauce Gardner.
And DJ Reed is back at practice?
That was I did not know that, actually, that their number 2 cornerback. He missed last week's game. A.J. Brown, you're starting. I get that. Devontae Smith, he had 1 catch for 6 yards last week. Jets allowed the second fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. They've allowed 1 touchdown to a wide receiver. But they haven't, I wouldn't say they've really stopped any good receivers so far this year. They just haven't really faced that many. So
DJ Reed's been limited in practice, but I believe he's still in the concussion protocol.
Would you start Breece Hall or Devontae Smith?
Smith in PPR for sure.
I think so.
Kyron Williams or Devontae Smith?
I'd go Kyron there.
Same.
All right. Start Dallas Goedert. I mean, what are you going to do? The Jets actually allow the most fantasy points to tight ends. A lot of touchdowns.
Yeah.
And that's it for that game, I think. Any interest in Tyler Conklin? He's got 50 or more yards in 3 of his last 4 games.
He is the poor man's Jonnu Smith. So right behind him.
All right. Start the Eagles DST. Dallas is at the Chargers. Okay. Tough calls in this game, Jamie? Who are the tough calls?
Michael Gallup for the Cowboys. I think you should consider starting. Well, I guess let's start with the obvious ones. Tony Pollard and CeeDee Lamb are obvious. So for the Cowboys, do you want to buy into Dak Prescott in a game that's expected to be 51 points? Do you want to buy into Jake Ferguson, who's coming off a bad game? And then do you buy into Michael Gallup, who's coming off a bad game also? I'm going to throw out the 49ers game because that defense is great. Chargers, not so much. So Gallup has some sleeper appeal here this week. I would consider starting Michael Gallup over Terry McLaurin this week. That's how much I think this game is going to be high scoring, and McLaurin's been that tough to trust. And 2 of the last 3 games, Gallup is better than Terry McLaurin. In terms of the Chargers, I think it's kind of all systems go with the 3 main guys of Herbert, Keenan Allen, and Austin Eckler. And then I think you put Josh Palmer kind of in that Michael Gallup range, but better, because what we saw the last 2 games without Mike Williams, 15 targets. He did kind of get saved in the game against the Raiders by the late catch late in the 4th quarter down the field. I think it was a 30-yard catch. but there's so many opportunities there. And so I just hope Justin Herbert's finger is not an issue and we see some sort of level of concern. He said he hasn't taken a snap out of from under center yet. Not that that matters by any stretch, but Eckler coming back maybe changes some things for the auxiliary pass catchers aside from Keenan Allen. But I think again, Kellen Moore against the Cowboys in a game that Vegas is telling you is going to be high scoring. I don't think the Cowboys defense is going to slow down the Chargers. It's just a matter, really, is Brandon Staley going to slow down the Chargers? So there's just a lot to like about a lot of players in this game.
Yeah, well, they're going to go for it on 4th down when they're up by 3 at their own 8-yard line.
That might determine the spread, to be honest with you.
That's ridiculous. All right, so Dak Prescott or Brock Purdy this week?
They're back-to-back for me. I would not be surprised if Prescott's better. You should be starting Purdy because of what he showed you, but I would not be surprised if this is the breakout game we've been waiting for Dak Prescott.
I'm going to rock with Brock.
Dak Prescott or Brock Purdy last week? Who would you guys take? Dak Prescott or Jared Goff on the road?
I'll take Dak.
I'll take Goff.
All right. Jake Ferguson or Logan Thomas?
Thomas, but it's close.
Agreed.
Ferguson or Ertz?
Ferguson.
Fergie.
Ferguson or Kmet?
Kmet, but I would start Ferguson over Pitts.
I currently have it Pitts, Kmet, Ferguson. I'm debating moving Kmet ahead of Pitts.
Okay.
I think I've already done that in non-PPR.
I think that suffices.
Nope, haven't.
Oh, what about the Dallas DST?
Yeah, I would try and stay away. I know that like a rebound game is kind of what happens in situations like this, but I kind of buy into the Chargers being able to compete on the scoreboard.
And they have a bye next week, so I don't know. Are you
Yeah,
dropping the
I don't know if I
Cowboys
want to.
DST
That's the thing. I don't think I'm cutting them unless I've got I feel really good about like a plan for DSTs moving forward. After the bye, they've got the Rams, the Eagles, and then the Giants and Panthers and Commanders. So they've got some great matchups down the line.
Yeah.
I wonder if you cut them, do you see them on the waiver wire before they play Philadelphia in a couple of weeks? And that's when you go back to them. I think you might.
All right, you could. I mean, hopefully they get some sacks at least in this game. Pad the stats a little. Giants at the Bills, our last game. This is an interesting game, actually, from a game script standpoint for maybe Gabe Davis, who's had 3 games with 4 targets or less. The Giants have allowed only 3 completions of 20 or more air yards. That's second fewest in the NFL. And they've allowed only 1 completion of 30 or more air yards. It was the 69-yard touchdown catch by Tyreek Hill in week 5. So their defense has played, I think, a little better. And even though they got smoked by the Dolphins, and they are not giving up the deep ball. I feel like that was the case last year too. So look, I mean, this game, like we talked about Barkley extensively in one question for each game. So I'm going to kind of skip him here, but you can go back to that segment if you want. One question for each game. We talked a lot about Barkley. He's an okay start if he plays. Darren Waller we'll talk about, but Gabe Davis for the Bills, start or sit?
Flex.
I'll say what Heath says every week. He's the number 3 receiver that you like to have in your lineup because if he goes off, you're going to be thrilled about it. But you got to understand that there may not be a huge performance if he doesn't catch a touchdown and certainly doesn't get the targets. So he is the definition of a boomer bust fantasy option. And so it just comes down to who you have. So better than McLaurin for me, better than Drake London. I would have said start him over both the Broncos receivers.
What about Amari Cooper, who now has PJ Walker?
I would start Gabe Davis over Amari Cooper.
I would too. Garrett Wilson?
I would start Garrett Wilson in PPR and half PPR. I would start Davis in non-PPR because we've seen him score more touchdowns.
Yeah, I have Davis 1 spot higher, but I do have Davis in PPR behind Hopkins, Pittman, and Zay Flowers.
What about the Joshes? Reynolds, Palmer, Downs.
I would start Davis over those guys for now, but
Same here.
I may move Josh Downs a little bit higher, so I may put him ahead of Davis.
Getting a bounce back from James Cook this week, guys?
Should.
Yep.
Here's another stat. The Giants, this is unbelievable. 23 straight games. No running back has more than 34 receiving yards or a receiving touchdown against the Giants. Very strange. They are elite against pass catching running backs.
What did McCaffrey have that game?
34. He's at the
Oh, so you moved the number up a little bit.
Yeah, it was 30.
Yeah.
It was like 29 or 30.
Yeah.
Then McCaffrey had 34, but still.
I think because after you did that for HQ, I did that as a prop. Take the under on it.
Did it work?
No, because it was like under 28.5, something like that.
Oh no, yeah, sorry, dude. But still, I mean, it's weird. Like they're just really good against that. They're really good against the deep ball, apparently, and it's middle of the field. I guess they must get smoked. We like Diggs, obviously. Josh Allen. Oh, Dawson Knox. Oh, if Kincaid is out and Knox plays, where are you ranking him?
We have it ranked that way right now. So he's like tight end 14 for me.
Yep, right in that range. Touchdown or bust tight end.
Starter sit Darren Waller this week.
As long as he's healthy, and I believe he practiced yesterday, Wednesday, I think
Yeah.
they said was a rest day for him. Even with Tyrod Taylor, I think he's still a top 12 tight end. So I would start Kmet over him. I might consider Logan Thomas over him. But really, for the most part, I don't think you're making a move to drop Darren Waller to pick up these guys. So you just kind of hope that last week's game was a sign of things to come. Chasing points, no Matt Milano. There's got to be some upside here for Darren Waller as long as Tyrod Taylor or Daniel Jones can stay upright behind that offensive line.
Tyrod Taylor has a career target share rate of 22% to tight ends. That's higher than to his running backs. Last week, Tyrod threw 12 passes. 4 of them went to Waller. That's a pretty good target share. I think the Giants know that the ball has to get into his hands.
All right,
and there's no Matt Milano for Buffalo.
That's true.
That's been the guy that shut down tight ends for a long time.
Dave, how was the microwaved fruit and yogurt?
It was disgusting. It was everybody saw it happen live. It was disgusting.
You microwave fruit and yogurt?
Oh, wait till you hear about this one.
This is what
This is hold on, no. This is Adam's favorite nightly dessert, Jamie. He takes
it's not my favorite.
Stop right now. He takes Greek yogurt and he takes frozen fruit. He microwaves the frozen fruit so it gets juicy, adds it to the Greek yogurt and adds a banana and mixes it all together. And that's his manna from heaven.
So the yogurt's still cold though.
The yogurt is cold. The banana is room temperature.
So you're defrosting the frozen fruit essentially.
Yeah, but right. And he's basically flavoring the Greek yogurt with the frozen fruit. And you know what? It sounds like a delicious treat if you use regular yogurt, but Adam's trying to cut down on his sugar.
Right.
And so he uses this Greek yogurt, which tastes like sour cream.
It's bitter. I get it.
Yeah, I like that if it's real fruit. I don't know if I'd be using frozen fruit.
Oh, frozen fruit's really good. I mean, the thing, it's just the yogurt that Dave didn't like, which I get. You have to get used to the taste of Greek yogurt, but everything is like, there's no sugar in it. It's all organic. Yep. It's a very nice dessert. It takes a little while.
Would you like me to make it up, Jamie, and bring it to you on Sunday? Want to try this?
No, I mean, I've been having that myself. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No, I don't mind at all.
What's your process?
I'll just take, just fresh fruit and drop it in yogurt.
Fresh fruit. See,
Greek yogurt? Hold on, wait. Greek yogurt or yogurt?
Either or.
See, I have fruit with yogurt all the time, but Greek yogurt, that's going too far.
No, that's fair. Like if you don't like Greek yogurt, you don't like Greek yogurt. I get that. That I like the frozen fruit. The point of the frozen fruit is to get the juice running and to really flavor the yogurt. The fresh fruit, I don't think really does that as much.
No,
just things I'm trying to help.
Put a little granola in it too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but then you're putting sugar back in.
Right. No, I try not to do that. Okay.
Why not just gnaw on a carrot?
You should all be taking health advice from me, obviously. It's the game of the week. All right, we got to go. We'll talk to you on the mailbag. Have a great weekend,
everybody. What do you think Dan's hair is going to look like? Let's take a guess.
It's going to look exactly the same because
I'm going to guess. He's so concerned about it. He's wearing a hat 100%.
No, he won't wear a hat. He looks terrible in hat, I bet. All right, let's talk to you later, everybody.